Williams now. Return feed for Johnson. He looks at the clock. Johnson. Wow. Fakes out Pierce and hits. Splash for Joe Johnson.
Wow, big time move for a 6'7" guy. How about getting it down and real low to the floor and going by Pierce, who's reaching again.
Slow down.
Slow down.
One of the greatest teammates in the world, boy. Straight up.
Ready for ice.
Johnson beats the buzzer. Johnson, nice spin move.
And he is what you would classify as a beast in the post for his position.
Joe Johnson looking for a shot. Nice move with the dribble.
Fantastic move by Joe Johnson.
Johnson for three. And Boston takes a timeout. The Hawks have come from 10 down in the fourth to lead by 5.
Here is Johnson with 4 on the shot clock. Works his way in. So Johnson and Smith now have scored all of the last 23 for Atlanta. They're up by 6.
10 seconds on the clock. Johnson still bouncing it. Johnson, pull-up jumper again.
And Joe Johnson going one-on-one almost exclusively tonight. Every time he touches the ball. Scores on this one, though. And the Hawks take it back up by 3.
Shot clock down to 7. Great move, Johnson around west of the J.
One quick, hard dribble attacks the rim. With that first step, he covered so much ground.
Joe Johnson, he put a major league move on Lou all day. Broke his ankles and put it in. Back-to-back overtime games. And they play their best first half of the season on the Expo. Beautiful move by Joe Johnson. 10 seconds left in the period. Nice crossover. Joe to the hole. Put it down. And a free throw to come.
He lost his footing as well on that crossover, but a great finish by Joe Johnson, being strong enough to finish it at the rim.
To Joe. 7, 6 to shoot. Here's Joe going up and in. Great dribble drive by Joe Johnson. Joe drives it. Up and in again!
Joe
34
Johnson.
for Joe. Timeout Sacramento with 23 seconds left.
Joe Johnson with Joe Keem on it. Johnson walks him in, then drives, then scoops and scores.
His eyes got big right there. He knew he had a mismatch.
Tied at 50. Joe Johnson with the slam.
Well, yes, how's he going to score more?
Just like that.
Mismatch. Joe Johnson capitalizes on the spin. Nobody home for the Lakers. No Gasol, no Bynum.
Ty Corbin's trying every defensive approach he can think of. What do you do with that? Johnson now 8 of 8. 5 to shoot. Johnson with 3. Lets it fly. Hits it.
6 to shoot. Behind the back. Good help by the Bucks. Tough one. Yes! What a shot by Joe Johnson.
Here's Joe again for the lead. Got it. Timeout Milwaukee. So the Hawks have come roaring back in overtime. Salmon's right in Joe's jersey. Now Joe Johnson driving it. Unstoppable from there. Oh boy. Up it comes to Joe. He's got to go quickly. The shot clock's at 5. Joe Johnson driving. Joe Johnson going up and hitting with 15.5.
Big time shot. That's what your superstars do.
Spread floor. Johnson will raise for the jumper.
That's the advantage when you have range.
Joe Johnson over Steven Jackson. Nothing but net. Joe Johnson over Durant.
Oh, and Joe Johnson has heated up.
Parker stays attached to Joe Johnson. A couple of bumps. Johnson wants to take the shot. He was determined and he knocked it down. That's an all-star there. Joe Johnson has 33.
Joe on the sideline. Creates some space on Dirk. What a move! Joe Johnson connects.
Johnson with the little quick drawback dribble.
Johnson working against Landry Fields. 5 on the shot clock. Tough step back and he knocks it down, continuing his red-hot trend from a couple of nights ago when he had 30.
Joe Johnson with a hesitation around Wallace. Got a hand in his face. Pretty good defense there. Tough defense, better offense.
Now we're down to 5 seconds. Joe Johnson bothered on the perimeter, turns and triples.
line to play. Unreal.
Hard to get a hand up and bother him. And that was one clutch make by that All-Star. He has had a great second half.
9, 8 to shoot. Joe with a little daylight for three and a tie. It's good.
Ooh, man.
A cold-blooded three by Joe Johnson.
Oh, that was a nice rhythm three. Just backed up. Salmon's kind of backpedaling. Joe Johnson knocks it down.
Johnson from way downtown knocks it in.
That one about a 30-footer. This is a heat check. You talk about knocking down the one prior to that. Long distance, the next best thing. Joe Johnson knocks down the dagger three. That's range.
And that could have been a 4-point play because Wade lunging at him knocked him to the floor.
Johnson with 6 on the shot clock. Bibby back to Johnson. Posey right on him. Johnson the fake. That's a three. Bang! You need a basket. Atlanta's going crazy. Mama, there goes that man. Joe Johnson gets Posey in the air. Says the Garnett. Too late. Gotcha. Atlanta ready to seal the deal.
7, 6. This is the ball game. Joe Johnson gets it off. Got it! With 0.7 seconds to go!
Thomas defending Joe Johnson.
Look at it. He's just a wonderful player. I heard somebody today on a talk show say he was just a jump shooter. Are you serious?
Oh, he's a scorer. Joe Johnson, 6'7", 240, 2-guard. With range.
Yeah, and a proven scorer. I mean, you give him that kind of space. This guy is terrific.
Shot clock at 4. Joe goes to work on Granger.
Oh, yeah, he lost him on that one.
And hits it.
He lost him on that one. The little tricky dribble by Joe. Oh, no, I'm stepping back. Here I go. You're too late. Nice little three-pointer. Buckets.
5 on the shot clock. 45 seconds to go in the quarter. And Joe Johnson hitting a 2. Stops the bleeding for the moment. Here's Johnson, 5 on the shot clock, and firing over Poe and hitting. So Joe Johnson, who was with the Celtics very briefly, played 48 games in a year and a half, gets his first points of the game.
Here comes Johnson going left hand inside. What a shot by Joe Johnson.
And that's what I mean. You cannot leave him out there one-on-one like that. He's too good. You have to get the ball out of his hands.
Joe Johnson against Jonas Jerebko. Johnson to the lane, hooks it up, hits it. This guy can score in bunches.
Joe against Villanova. Goes up.
Count it! And Hawks have seized control of this game. Villanova again trying to get out of the way. Great defense. Joe Johnson, you knew he wasn't going to be quiet the whole quarter.
All 7 games have been lopsided. Still 8:55 remaining, but you don't get the feeling, Miami, you got a shot to go back in as Joe Johnson does it again.
Johnson takes that little baseline fall away of his.
Garnett to Joe Johnson, who has been a Piston killer. Stop and go move for Joe Johnson, right to the rack, just like that. Finally gets the rest. DJ Augustine replaces him. Joe Johnson triples from way downtown. Net clock at 6 for Joe Johnson from the lane. Hanging gun goes. Joe Johnson backs on Caron Butler. Turns and fires and fills it up. Yeah. He squares up, man. When he turns, he's ready to let it go. Johnson backs. Spins and guns. It goes. This man has almost personally spoiled the Pistons' home opener. He is so red hot and knows it. 2 more in the bank.
Joe Johnson went to the bench with 3 fouls. The spin, the bucket. He just took young Andrew Wiggins to class. Johnson the back end. Johnson too strong. Taking it right at the rookie. Johnson nearly lost it. Shot clock winding down. Johnson step back off one leg. He trades it. ISO Joe. Johnson to the hoop. Count it.
He waited. He waited and waited.
Johnson against Ware. Oh boy. Over the rookie. Taking him to school.
Here's Johnson on Harkless. Johnson got it and the foul.
Yeah,
bring them in an hour earlier than they normally come to get you work done then, but they've got to concentrate and make it work.
And Johnson does, banking it home. That might be the dagger. A 10-point Brooklyn lead.
Joe Johnson got 3. He's too strong for Gerald Green, so if he's putting it down 2 times, you got to think about maybe going to help Gerald.
Nice move. Johnson spins baseline and flips it in.
Joe Johnson used to shoot this shot all the time. Now he tries to get to that rim.
Well, he's big enough, and that's where his advantage has been tonight. He takes full advantage there. Johnson, tough shot. Johnson with Blake on him, now wants to go inside. Clears out his teammates. Drives the middle, scores again. Here's Johnson working down on Matthews. Wesley playing with 3 fouls. Johnson goes baseline and hits. So Joe Johnson going back to work.
Off the dribble, the jump shot, it goes. Jack, kick out for Johnson. Shot clock winding down. In traffic, Joe Johnson finishes. Johnson works his way in. Forces. Oh, it goes! Joe Johnson with a chance for 3. Antetokounmpo gets screened. Johnson the spin. The jumper. Yes! Joe Johnson from the outside.
Johnson in the post against Butler. Trying to take it to him. Johnson this time wins the battle.
And that's Joe playing as hard as he possibly can.
Johnson couldn't get it going in the first half against the Knicks. Knocks down the jump shot. Joe Johnson good on his first attempt. Body against body with Leonard. Turns. Johnson. Tough delivery. It goes. Joe Johnson for 2. Cross. Fade. Oh, Joe Johnson. Counted on the isolation.
Here's Joe Johnson. Anderson with him as he turns the corner. And Johnson just flicks it at the rim and hits.
Yeah, they are a wonderful ISO team.
Johnson gonna have to go with it, which he does with ease a lot of times.
Oh my goodness.
Johnson with a crossover and go. And Joe Johnson starting to heat up a little bit now with 17 points.
Joe Johnson posting and scoring. He is so good with his back to the bucket. Joe Johnson forced a momentary switch. Now Thompson stays on him. Johnson backs out with a tough gunslinger 3.
Joe Johnson came to the ball against Marion now.
Johnson flips it and scores it. Looked inside. Plumlee was covered up. Joe Johnson. Familiar step back. Yep. Joe Johnson.
Johnson against Chandler. The battle continues. Johnson the drive. Johnson the fade. Oh, he hits! Joe Johnson!
Johnson just 3 for 11 in the game. Takes it in the paint. 4 for 12.
That gets you on his hip.
Nice move from Johnson who floats it home.
Johnson operating against Gay. 5 to shoot. Johnson off the window. What an angle for Joe Johnson. Johnson banging the dribble with 9 to shoot. Works his way in for the bucket.
Yeah, that's how smooth Joe Johnson is.
Joe Johnson back in there. Johnson with a good spin and a jumper that's good. There's Johnson backing in, goes up and scores. He just backed Jimmy in there. Joe Johnson against Noah. Jab step and then the jumper in the air, and that's good.
I'll tell you what, again, he is a tough cover.
Joe Johnson with a nice drive.
Johnson the back in on Jefferson. Turns and hits. Johnson gives up his dribble.
Right back to him with the size advantage.
Wants it against Ellis. Johnson takes the baseline. Tough shot. Ellis did not know where he was. Anderson to Johnson. Parsons has got the assignment. Joe Johnson in his face. Johnson down the middle. The shake. Johnson gets it to go. Joe Johnson. Johnson, wow, drop step. Joe Johnson, terrific move around Green. Johnson, post up. The back in. Johnson. Zeller tries to help, and Johnson still works it towards the rim. Johnson against Thomas, strokes the jumper, and hits. Johnson. High floater. Put it over Carter Williams and Noel.
Topside bounce to Joe Johnson. Step back, long gun, got it.
Wow.
Inside to Joe Johnson against Duran. The turn and gun goes for Joe Johnson.
Wow. How do you stop that?
This has got Joe Johnson stopped. Last time he got inside. This time he gets inside and scores.
6 to shoot. Mismatch on Gortat. A 3 is good for Joe Johnson. Johnson's still trying to work on Butler. Johnson will take and hit. Feathery touch.
This is Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson. Shot
clock at 3. We'll take it inside.
Johnson one-on-one over Ross. Count it. Joe Johnson. Shot clock is down to 5. Joe Johnson with 3, with 2, shakes him off and hits. Joe Johnson. Clutch. Nets need a bucket. They get it. It's a 3. Joe Johnson.
Johnson through his legs. He steps back, and that right foot is on the line.
No good. Lopez the back tap. Johnson, that's a long 3. Oh! Johnson nails it.
Blocked down to 6. Jump shot, and it rattles around and through. Johnson ducks inside, and Melo already with 1 foul.
Double team, it's going up.
He creates some space and hits a deuce.
Johnson steps out. Green forces him inside the arc. And Johnson makes back-to-back buckets for the Brooklyn Nets.
Now Joe Johnson sizing up Nurkic and rolls it home.
This guy you got to worry about getting hot. Joe Johnson again. And that's a mismatch. He's got the size on a switch with Eric Gordon.
They want to post up Joe Johnson. Size advantage against Devin Harris. Working him over and scoring. Joe Johnson.
Too big there. Too strong.
Johnson, high arcing delivery over Green. Shot clock at 3.
Johnson into the paint, gets it to drop. Had just 1 point during that span. It was 91-76 at one point. Brooklyn, and there, Joe Johnson ends the drought.
Joe Johnson. Johnson spins around Wiggins.
70 years old today.
Is he really? As Johnson buries the jumper, his first field goal of the night. Johnson's 3 tied it at 101 in regulation. Johnson's jumper ties it in overtime. Johnson's jumper is good. Joe Johnson puts the Nets up 2 possessions.
And Joe Johnson, his second field goal.
Oh boy, I tell you what, this is terrific for Miami to go out here and guard Joe. He just made a heck of a shot, but he was defended well.
Pacers have never been able to solve them tonight.
That's what he does.
Johnson against Turner, ball fake, and the turnaround goes for Joe Johnson. Johnson back in, Johnson, the deuce.
Good test here for Sean. That's the fadeaway here. There it is, and he scores.
Good defense to keep it.
Joe Johnson, a long 3 ball, and hits a killer trap.
Johnson, the floater. Joe Johnson starting to heat up. Outside for Johnson, 7 to shoot. Johnson trying to work his way towards the rim. A fade. He's got it. Joe Johnson buries it. Johnson off the window. Tough bucket for Joe Johnson. Shot clock is down to 10. Johnson searching for his offense. There it is.
I got to give credit to Markel Brown, though.
Johnson back in on Carroll. Turns. Was expecting someone to help. There was no one there, so Johnson banks it in. Johnson turns. ISO Joe! 109-108 Brooklyn. There's Joe Johnson, a back in against Porter. Johnson using the window. Joe Johnson. Johnson asking for it against Butler. They've had some battles the last couple of years. Johnson the back in. Shot clock winding down. Johnson. Kick out. Johnson. Thought twice about it. Had an open 3. Drives in on Harkless. And scores with the offhand.
Johnson backs his way. Nice pump fake and scores. Beautiful move by Joe Johnson. Johnson with the floater. Joe Johnson.
Johnson against Harper. Fires and puts it down. 8-point game. Johnson. Brooklyn just will not go quietly.
So good play here. Just go right back to it. Joe has to make a decision.
Johnson sticks it. Nets will try to get into a set here with Johnson against Bryant. Goes behind the back. Beats him off the dribble for 2.
Good to see that ball for Joe this season.
Joe Johnson anticipating that Kobe was going to reach for that one and went behind the back and freed himself up for a little baby jumper.
Beat it to Johnson. Using the body. The back in. The fade. Got it.
Lovely. Beautiful to see that go down for him. Falling away. Soft.
Johnson around Antetokounmpo and floats it home. So adept at that runner.
Hard to double him up top.
Whoa, Johnson, an early shot clock bomb. 3 to shoot, being harassed, difficult shot, but he hit it.
Tough one that time. Battle between Iguodala and Joe Johnson.
Johnson wiggles his way, spinning, and hitting. 4 on 2. Johnson spins free and connects. Just took Reggie Jackson to school. Johnson with 7 to shoot, the jab step, and the jumper.
Johnson against Harden, 12 to shoot. Johnson, bottom.
It's a beautiful thing to see.
Shot clock's down to 8. Johnson the spin. Johnson the bump. Oh, Joe Johnson, the off-balance delivery.
There's Johnson. And Joe Johnson trying to become a factor offensively. 7 to shoot. Johnson wants it. Around Redick. Johnson connects. Can't handle it. Johnson trying to work Bosch. Bosch hung nicely. Johnson, tough angle off the window.
You can turn it around here.
Johnson, nice little shake, puts it home. And 911 straight games with a field goal for Joe Johnson.
Johnson, fend off on Butler. Oh, Joe Johnson with a smooth fade. Johnson, the fade, knocks it down. Johnson, the back in on the smaller Felton. Johnson, the fade. He hits. 75-73.
Johnson on the move, shimmying inside. Too easy for Joe Johnson.
Smooth though with Joe, wasn't it? Get it ahead for Johnson. One-on-one with Fournier. We approach the halfway point of the third. Johnson, hand in his face, and he cans it.
He's always still looking for his shot.
Yep.
Johnson on a 3, he answers.
This is a nice matchup. Crowder and Johnson.
Johnson, the step back is good. Splash.
Joe's got to get a shot off.
He does, and hits.
Johnson one-on-one with Turner. Joe Johnson. 8 to shoot. Johnson drives in. Johnson, it's good. Joe Johnson. Johnson against the smaller defender. Goes to the rim for 2. Wow, nice move. Joe Johnson, ball handling wizardry from Joe.
And Joe has looked like a different player.
Joe Johnson answers with a triple.
Johnson with 4 to shoot. The step back long 2, and it's good.
Johnson in a mismatch with Nurkic. Fakes it. Oh, ankle breaker! Joe Johnson just put Nurkic on his backside. 1.3 left. Nets down 2. Johnson gets a shot off. Oh, money! Joe Johnson! That's a winner! Oh! Between the legs, Joe Johnson gets it right with a jump shot, and Terry Stotts doesn't like what he sees. Johnson off the spin with a silky smooth shot. ISO Joe back to his old tricks. Joe Johnson. 5 minutes left in the first half. Joe Johnson, that's perfect. Johnson, oh my, how did he do that?
Boy, he had to beat 3 defenders on that one.
Johnson backs him down and made it look easy. That's what Joe Cool does. Avery Bradley, a good defender, but Joe Johnson, great offense. Walking down Bradley.
Oh man, a little shimmy.
And Joe Cool with the furrowed brow, having his way with the Celtic defense.
He's just too big, too strong, and that's just one big-time shot.
We got ISO Joe. Joe Johnson on a fadeaway. Joe Johnson on a beautiful turnaround. Batum defending Johnson, goes behind the back. Joe Johnson counted and a foul. Johnson, the turnaround, high off the window. Joe Johnson flat out knows how to score. Johnson on a fade, knocks it down. Joe Johnson, what a pro.
Johnson with a great spin and finish over Valanciunas. That's 6 in a row for the Heat.
With Jordan, here's Johnson, draws a double team in the corner, 7 on the shot clock. Johnson, the old pro, on a fallback jumper, a whole baby beautiful shot.
Johnson goes to work on Westbrook, who avoids the pump fake, but then overplayed that.
Here's Johnson, pushes up a shot and in.
Nice move. He can score the basketball.
Nice move, Joe. Between his legs, picks up the dribble. There's a tough step back. Jay for 2. Oh, baby. They were working on Another 30-point game this year. Johnson left one.
Come on, Joe. You're making it look too easy.
Joe Johnson, 3 to shoot. He's got 2 on a step back. Looks good is. Just beat the clock.
How silky sweet was that shot?
5 to shoot. Joe, step back, Jay. Got it!
He is so good.
Jumps out on Joe Johnson. He's got 4 to shoot. In the paint, step back, Jay. Tough shot. Caught the rim and finds its way down.
Skips it back to Joe Johnson, working on Cunningham. Through the legs, crossing over. Tough fade, Joe Johnson.
Joe Johnson corner. He's got 4 to shoot, down to 3. You won't rush him. There's that turnaround, Jay. Oh, my.
Just beat the buzzer.
He gets him in the corner. Double team comes. He just reverses out of it. Look at Ty Lawson on the bench. He's like, come on.
5 seconds left. Joe Johnson with 4. Johnson with 2. Drives in. Puts it up. Gets the bounce at the gun. And the Jazz win game 1. ISO Joe.
Johnson one-on-one with Crawford. ISO Joe.
Crawford guarding Johnson. Joe Johnson for 2 at the horn.
Joe Johnson. Balamute is on him. Shot clock at 1.
Exclusively one-on-one. Let ISO Joe do what he does best. One-on-one basketball.
And ISO Joe, little step back over DeAndre Jordan. Wow, what a shot by Joe Johnson. Johnson coming with a screen. Has it now. And Balamute stays with him. Joe Johnson, little step back. Oh, and Joe Johnson does it again. Clutch. Man, ISO Joe getting it done in this series.
Boy, he gets to where he wants to go, doesn't he? Joe Johnson playing at his own pace, Coach.
Joe Johnson posting up Klay Thompson. Backs in, uses his strength. That's not an easy thing to do. Klay Thompson defended it well, but Joe Johnson just a better play there.
Joe Johnson behind the back. Beautiful. Pushes and hits. They flat out to Joe. He'll take that shot. Kicks, fires, and bakes it home! Joe, he loves the ISO one-on-one. He's got a little wiggle on a step back. Shot is up and rattles in. Rubio on an inbound. Johnson, long jumper. Oh, just beat the clock. The vet. Johnson, step back. Up and in. Sweet. You heard the net singing all the way over here. 15 to shoot. Decker against Joe Johnson on the step back. Got it. Oh, what a confident shot. Oh, nice spin off the shoulder. Reverse shot. Counted, Big Joe.
Joe Johnson showing off at age 36 in his 17th NBA season.
ISO Joe.
Yeah, we've seen put the little move on.
Shot clock at 3. You think Joe Johnson was worried?
Oh, not at all. Johnson swings in for Johnson. That's now trailed by 3. Johnson, fend off. Johnson, count it. Johnson, the drive. Box! Joe Johnson hits the leaner. Fans on their feet at Barclays Center. Johnson, crossover. Johnson one-on-one. Johnson to the rim. He's got it! Joe Johnson! Brooklyn goes in front by 1 with 26.2 left to play. Nets looking for the win. Johnson, the step back. He buries it! Joe Johnson!
Oh, my goodness!
He wins it in double overtime! Officials are going to take a look at it.
Wow. That is a great individual effort.
That was real, and that was spectacular.
Yes, it was. Joe Johnson with an unbelievable play. Defense was not bad by Tayshaun Prince, but Joe Johnson in here, just a little bit of a push there, and yes, there is no doubt. Butter.
Johnson. Step back. He can't miss! Joe Johnson! And the foul!
And we got him to smile a little bit.
His teammates come over to congratulate Johnson on an incredible third quarter from the 13-year veteran.
Johnson's shot goes up and in.
saw. Pretty move from Johnson, who's back in a bit of a groove last couple of games. Johnson with James right on top of him. He already has a foul. Johnson gets inside. What a start for Joe Johnson. He's got 15 points already. 5 to shoot. Johnson, nice little spin move. Boy, he's in his zone. 7 for 7 from the field in the first quarter.
Johnson, who had 19 points in the first meeting in Brooklyn, led the Nets. Spin move on Rubio and in.
Johnson on a pull. Nice crossover. Ooze from the crowd, and it gets the Nets bench off their seats.
Listen, Joe Johnson is a fantastic, high percentage, one-on-one guy, foul line extended, either on the right or left side of the floor.
Johnson a little inconsistent, like many of his teammates earlier this season, starting to play much better.
Bogan's in for Johnson. 4 seconds left. Johnson with 3, with 2. Johnson the leaner. Yes! Joe Johnson! He does it again! Johnson at the buzzer!
Grant guarding the inbound. Ibaka picks up Garnett. Then they switch. Ibaka's got Johnson behind his back. He's up and fires and scores! Johnson scores the winner for Brooklyn at the buzzer!
Johnson in the lane. Johnson takes it.
Oh, yeah! I showed Joe doing his thing.